right, I'll call the meeting to order. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory in the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. I'm your chairperson this morning, Linda McFadden. To my far left is Ed Zawatsky, and to my left is Ken Steele. Our secretary this morning is Hada Aziz, and our assessor is Mr. Ken Wong. We'll be hearing applications for revision for the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor may make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by council and is independent of it in the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decision. You'll receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. I swear people in. And just for the record, I may have to stop, hold the hearing at approximately 9:30 for a few minutes to take phone calls. So I apologize in advance. Thank you.
Please state your full name.
Ken Wong.
And you affirm the evidence you are to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you. Please state your full name.
Jared Story.
And you swear the evidence you are to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. The first item on the docket today is 1061 Sargent Avenue, and we're looking at assessed value. Correct? Yeah. Okay, when you're ready, Mr. Wong.
The subject property is 1061 Sargent. The loan number is 130-114-33200. It's a residential apartment that's 6 stories high. It was built in 1988 and has 74 units with 45 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $908 to get a potential income of $806,000. We used a 2.6% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $785,000. There's a 51% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $384,000. Capped at 5%, we have an estimated market value of $7,686,000, which is $403,000 per unit. On page 4 are our rent comparables. The rents we use are in line with what's in the market. Maybe a little bit lower. On the bottom of page 4 are some expense ratio comparables, ranging from about 43 to 53%. So the models are applied at 51% expense ratio, which is a little bit on the higher end of the range. On page 5 is information on how we derived our cap rates. The cap rates range from 4 to 7.3%, with the majority of them falling between 4.9 and 5.3%. Page 6 are some cap rate sales. They are there to substantiate the accuracy of the model. but some of the cap rates presented range from 4 to 6%, and on the bottom of page 6 is the cap rate for 500 footage, which is 4.07%. On page 8 is a picture of the subject property with its location. On page 9 is some information on the property. It's a seniors housing co-op. So, it being a seniors housing co-op, using their income or expenses to try to establish a market value would probably lead to an inaccurate estimate of market value. On page 10 and 11 are the income and expense mailers provided. On the last page are the CMHC market rents. These average CMHC rent for this age of building is $953, and the model has applied a slightly lower rate of $908. So this is a subsidized senior housing co-op, and using the income expenses wouldn't lead to an accurate estimate of market value. The rates that we've used are representative of market. The rents are supported by market, and the expenses that we've used are supported by the market as well. The cap rate is in line with similar properties, larger masonry buildings. So the assessment for the model is supported by the market, and I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $7,686,000.
Thank you. Question, Councilor Story?
Yes, thank you. Excuse me. Okay, so we've established this is a seniors housing co-op, correct?
Let's see that box, please. Tissue.
Oh, sure. Thank you.
Okay. So we've established this is a seniors housing co-op, correct?
Yes.
Okay, but the challenge today is to determine what the free and open market value of it may be if it were acting as a what we'll call a more typical multifamily asset, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I guess first off, have you visited the site?
No.
Pardon me?
No.
You have not, okay. You do a general familiarity with the area? The old West End, right?
Yes.
It's by the old pool. Okay, that's fine. Now it's zoned M1, manufacturing. This is multifamily res, so that'd be a legally non-conforming use, is that correct?
Appears to be the case, yes.
Okay, and the asset was built in '88 with an effective year of '88, so then is it safe to say from the city and from the model's view, there's been no permitted work to extend the useful life of this asset, the economic life?
Not that we would be aware of.
Okay, and there's no basement, so all storage presumably would be in suite or off-site, is that fair to say?
I wouldn't know.
Well, if we don't, your evidence that says that there's basement area is 0, correct?
Yes.
There's no basement, okay. All right, now, turning to your income value summary, you have an average monthly rent of $908, but you can see based on what the owners submitted that it's closer to like $643 and $709 or something like that. So you don't use the actuals, you use a rent based on what you believe the market for this asset to be, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and the inputs that you use on the next page, none of these, of course, are retirement homes, correct?
No.
No. and they don't have a history of subsidy or anything like that. They've always been earning economic profit and performing in free and open multifamily universe in that market, correct?
Can you repeat the question?
Okay, so all the inputs that you use to determine what the market rent would be, they don't have a history of subsidized rents?
No, there would be normal market,
Oh, okay.
market apartment buildings.
Okay, that's fine. So then again, on page 3, are all of these inputs model generated?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, did you overwrite any of them?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Does the first thing that strikes me is the cap rate is 5%. Does that not seem extremely low given the history of subsidized rents and no economic profit in assets such as this? The area.
We're treating it as a normal apartment building.
Okay. So the model doesn't have any ability of capturing subsidized housing or social housing or anything of that nature. Is that correct? It doesn't capture that detail.
No, but I guess some of the property, some of the subsidized properties are a little bit worn down, and so we try to reflect that if warranted.
And where would we overwrite that, or where would we capture that if we did? If I'm working for the department and I see that the model has kicked out this value with these inputs, what would I alter effectively to capture some of the challenges of social or subsidized housing?
Well, there could be like an income folly.
Okay.
Well, I mean, because you can have two twin buildings that perform differently, and so you have to be able to reflect that.
Okay. Do you think a next prudent purchaser would see the history of this property and have a sense of confidence or a sense of trepidation given the history of subsidized rents and the general history of call it low economic to no economic profit? That would equate to more risk for a next purchaser or for less risk?
Well, I mean, if you look at it that way, it's going to be like the property is worth nothing, and so we don't look at it that way. We just look at it as a regular apartment building to try to remove those aspects of a non-market apartment building, a non-market property.
Okay. All right, so your cap rate table here from page 5. These are the broker reports. Now is it safe to say that this type of asset wouldn't be included in the broker's study? Wouldn't be considered investment grade, would it?
I wouldn't know about the other.
You wouldn't know? Okay. All right, now let's talk about your cap rates. Page 6. Now, at this point, we've heard this a number of times, but you're aware that the first 3 inputs on your cap rate table, Roach, Talbot, and Maxwell, were all purchased with the intention to renovate. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, and you're aware that we have a municipal board decision that says it's inappropriate to use those types of sales for to impute a cap rate study. You're aware of that because it effectively artificially distorts the cap rates downwards because the purchaser here has atypical motivation, is purchasing an economic opportunity as opposed to the rents in place. Are you aware of that?
Well, I mean, the decision that you're referring to says, I mean, if you're trying to say that we shouldn't use certain cap rates, we don't know if properties are going to be renovated or not, and what we do know is like if those cap rates yield accurate estimates of market value, and in the particular case of our model, these lower cap rates, they do yield accurate estimates of market value. And with regards to the decision that the municipal board decision that you're referring to, they say that whether there was intention to renovate or not, it doesn't disqualify a sale from using a sale for a cap rate.
Okay. A precedent of the municipal board states that we should not consider a cap rate derived on a sale where there was intention to renovate, enclosed as, and I have this for my rebuttal, made available to you. Order A18431 dated October 29, 2018 states quite clearly, with the 4 remaining comparables, sufficient concerns were raised by the applicant on 3 of them regarding the purchaser's intention to significantly renovate or alter the structures. The applicant produced evidence from the purchasers, which makes the board
I mean,
question.
if you wanted to present that, I mean,
I'd like to finish my sentence, if you don't mind. The applicant produced evidence from the purchasers, which makes the board question the use of the purchase price and income information, and then we have the breakdown of all these sales that were included. And these are among them. So I would just like to enter that into evidence and suggest that the cap rates that are being used by the city to develop a cap rate table are inappropriate, and that's been ruled decisively on by the municipal board. Okay. Now, with that being said, you've also included the sale of 500 Portage in your evidence, correct?
Yes,
Okay, and that's Colony Square. Are you aware of that?
yes,
And that was purchased by Timber Creek. Are you aware of that?
yes,
And Timber Creek's entire business model is to take assets that are underperforming, to renovate them, and to reposition them on the market. Are you aware of that?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure? Okay, are you aware that Timber Creek's, the financial side of Timber Creek, they're the largest mortgage company in Canada, they underwrite their own mortgages. Are you aware of that?
No.
So knowing all of those points now, and let's just talk about this building. I used to work in this building. There's a large parkade. There's about 80,000 square feet of commercial space between retail and office. Is that correct?
There is a 20% commercial.
Okay, so this isn't a purely apartment building that was purchased with the income in place. It was purchased with the intention to renovate and includes a number of other income streams. You're aware of that?
Well, it's difficult to say, like, when you look at what it's sold for and the operating income that it was estimated, it yields a 4.07% cap rate.
It was in the news a number of times saying they were gonna spend years and years, spending tens of millions of dollars to renovate it, so, I'm gonna suggest that that's not appropriate. Okay, so and I'd like my cap rate argument to carry forward to the balance of the, files on this docket.
Certainly, I just want to give Mr. Wong an opportunity to ask any questions he has of this rebuttal evidence that has been entered.
No, just that, if you go to page 9 of the evidence. On the first paragraph where it's underlined, midway through that section, it says the board does not accept that any intention to renovate should disqualify a property sale. So, I mean, I don't know more.
Okay,
Just to clarify, the board did side with our side, and we decisive, so that's fine, okay, so that's my,
does the panel have any questions of this rebuttal evidence?
None for me, thanks.
No, nothing this year.
Okay, thank you. That's fine, go ahead now.
all right, I think we're getting close to the end of this brief. Now, you have included the CMHC table here, but again, this doesn't capture subsidized housing or social housing or what we'll effectively call retirement homes, does it?
No, I mean, if you're using that, you wouldn't use those things to try to get a market value.
Right, and that's the issue here, that we have to make some adjustments somewhere. And I would suggest that you've not made any adjustments to capture the site-specific issues facing this property. Those are my questions, thank you.
Question, okay. Mr. Swatsky.
Yes, on the specifics, there's 74 total units. And this is a high-rise unit, correct?
It's a medium-sized building.
Is it, in your category, is it, under your table, which one is it? High-rise, low-rise, A, B?
Our cap rates are, we don't distinguish in our cap rates.
But it's not a low-rise,
No.
so it must be a high-rise. Okay. The other question is, there are how many units? 1 and 2 bedrooms, 53 and 21.
Yes.
How do they compare in terms of square footage to the market? Like if we're looking at a market possible evaluation, are
Yeah.
these units the same as or similar to, or are they smaller than what you would normally find in a market?
Yeah, based off of the size of the building, I would say it's normal.
Normal?
Yeah.
They're
They're not exceptionally big or small.
Okay. Thank you, that's all the questions I had.
Mr. Steele.
I know you mentioned you have it inspected location, but what is the condition of it? Do you have anything previous inspections or that tell us the condition of the location? Specifically the building?
I don't think we've been inspected in a while, so, I mean, just looking at the overhead shots, it does seem like it is a average condition. I've not inspected it, I can only, like based off of the pictures that are in my brief, it seems to be an average building.
Has the building been renovated?
Not to our knowledge. Sometimes work is done without our knowledge, sometimes work is done without permits.
Just going back to your cap rate table on page 5. Where does this fit in here with respect to your 5.0 cap? Where is this in this table here?
It fits within the 20th and 80th percentile.
Okay, that's under April 1st, 2018.
Yeah.
That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. This building was built in 1988, and the model has applied the 5% cap. Previously, I've seen many buildings in the 1970s, 1960s, where the cap applied by the model was 5.3. What would be the difference?
It's just a newer building. It's just a newer building, it's built in 1988.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Mr. Story.
Thank you very much. Okay, 1061 Sergeant Avenue. So we have, once again, a high-rise building. Now, anything over 5 stories is generally considered a high-rise. Okay. Now, this building, again, is built in 1988 with no age variant on it, so it is true to its vintage. It was constructed for the purpose of creating a seniors housing cooperative, so I would suggest that it is utility built. Now, the question came up as to suite size, which is an excellent question. Generally, these assets do have smaller than market suites. I was not able to confirm, so I'd be speculating, but that is something that is typical in subsidized or social housing, and a general utility build as opposed to a higher grade degree of finishing, and that's fairly typical. I believe that to be the case here. So we've got 53 one-bedroom suites, 21 two-bedroom suites, and the city is suggesting a market value for this asset of $7,686,000. Now that's based on standard market parameters for assets that are performing in the free and open market. We're suggesting that a value of $6,174,000 is more appropriate, because part of the exercise today is to capture the site-specific elements of this property, and it's impossible to overlook the fact that this is a senior social housing complex. Okay, so once again, we are on the north side of Sargent. We're between Aaron Street and Wall. This is Sargent Park. We're about a block away from the old Sargent Park pool, and that's the older section of Winnipeg's West End. Again, 6 stories, built in '88, presently being used as a subsidized seniors multifamily residential building, and the site size, according to the City of Winnipeg Property and Taxation Records, is 1.4 acres, and it is zoned for light manufacturing, though it is being used for multifamily residential. Once again, 74 units, 53 one-bedrooms, 21 two-bedroom units. For the purposes of this exercise, we are disputing the assessor's cap rate of 5%, and we're instead using a cap rate of 6%. Now, this is one that we went back and forth on. We were on the fence, and we generally adjust the cap rate upward to capture the inherent risks of social housing, how a next prudent purchaser might see this asset. Generally, we have no economic profit to speak of. That leads to issues of deferred maintenance. The suites are generally smaller. There's generally large common areas that are not typical of standard market assets. But for this one, we did choose a cap rate of 6%. We think that that's fair, if not conservative. So with all those points taken into consideration, we come to a market value of $6,173,569, rounded to $6,174,000. I have my income work up here. Now, we do have partial subsidy, so when you look at the actual potential gross market rents, we're at $767,836. The city's modeling $806,007. Now, typically, and I believe we'll see this later on the docket, typically those numbers would be so far apart that we would accept the city's market and then apply our own expenses, but in this case, it appears that we're in line, so we've used the actuals. And you can see when we pick up extra income from miscellaneous and parking, our effective gross income is effectively bang on. We're at 784, they're at 785. So what we've done, excuse me, is added our actual expenses as submitted on the mailers by the owner over 3 years of financials. And we come to an expense ratio of 52.8%, which seems to be completely reasonable. That's just a tick north of 50%. The city's at 51.1, so we're actually just slightly higher. So the material issue that comes into play here is the cap rate. So we're suggesting that a 5% cap rate is aggressively low for an asset of this nature, of this vintage in this location, and for this use. So we are adjusting upwards to 6%. And again, we come to an indicated market value of the reference date of $6,174,000, and we respectfully submit that the board adjust the value of this asset for the 2020 realty cycle. Now on my page 9, I've got some photos of our subject. I'll leave those for you for your perusal. Have a look at how it looks. You know that it is on a railroad track as well. And barring any questions, that is my presentation. Thank you.
Mr. Wong?
Sir, I was just wondering how you got your income for 767?
Sure. We've got the statements provided by the owner. We included these here. So we take 3 years of income statements and then we stabilize them into what we'll call a most typical year. This is typical of the market. We take 3 years and we say, okay, are there any anomalies here? And that allows us to stabilize the income stream to what we would call a typical year, and that is typical of the market. And we've been doing that since the Marion Holdings decision of 1995. So that is how we approach these assets.
No, like, you know how you have 767 in the stabilized column?
Okay. Yeah.
How did you get that?
How did we get 767? That is our December 2017 rent roll. Now you'll see that that's higher than, so here we've got 16 and 17. We noticed that there's a drop based on, so starting in 16 we're at 582, and we have subsidies coming to 720, and 17 we're at 678. So we took the December 2017 rent roll and we multiplied that revenue by 12, and that gives us that's how we get to our number. So that's an average of 908 per suite.
So does that include subsidies?
Subsidies are added in, yeah.
Okay.
So that would bring us to market, right? When we take the subsidies out, we're below market. When we add them back in, that's what market would typically be. So.
Oh, so I think you're including subsidized revenue in your valuation.
Well, we're trying to come to market value, right? So that's how we're trying to get an economic picture of how this asset's performing.
That's all my questions.
Mr. Zalewski?
Yes, back to the suites. You indicate that they might be smaller than usual, and the assessor says otherwise, it might be normal. In 1988, when this building was built, was it constructed for the purpose of senior co-op?
Yes, it was.
It was.
It was.
By?
Pardon me?
By who?
By the Icelandic Seniors Group. They're called Hotel Sitter Housing Co-op.
So,
And I believe it was underwritten by CMHC, if I'm not mistaken, but I'd have to check my file on that. But it was purchased and developed for the purposes of
so you
seniors housing.
believe under that scenario, it has smaller than?
I'm speculating, but in my experience, and I've dealt with a number of subsidized social seniors housing that were built for that purpose, they can be down to 350 square feet for what they call a bachelor. So typically 350 to 470 is typical. I would be speculating here, but in terms of the larger picture of social subsidized housing, the suites are generally smaller.
Thank you. No further questions.
Steve Steele?
Have you, because of the location, have inspected it?
I've been outside of it, yeah, certainly.
Outside, but not inside?
I've not been inside, I've been outside a number of times, at least I worked at the pool down the street, so I'm well familiar with the area, to be certain.
Do you know if there's been any substantial renovations to it since?
Nothing permitted that I can see, so, and the city has not adjusted the age variance, so we would be speculating, but an educated guess would be that, no, it's probably reasonably true to its vintage, I would suggest.
That's all my questions.
Mr. Story, can we agree that there's likely a difference between a co-op housing development and a completely subsidized social housing?
Oh, in terms of ownership payment?
Well, ownership and the financial model.
Well, I think in other cities, when we think of co-op housing, we, like in Toronto or Vancouver, we're starting to talk about strata title. Here, you're asking if it's different than, say, a Manitoba housing structure or
Yes.
something of this sort? Yeah, it would likely be a higher grade than an older Manitoba housing asset. I would
A higher-
imagine. Would be, the finishings perhaps would be of a higher grade than an older asset. I'm not sure, is that what you're?
That is, as well though, not every unit in this complex would be rent geared to income. It's not a rent geared to income model.
It's not rent geared to income, it's subsidy, that's right,
Right,
right.
okay.
Yeah. And it is, I should say, it is 55 plus, so it's seniors subsidy, right? It's called the, Tax 55 or something. There's a government program that will cover the rents, but I believe the entire building is school tax exempt, so it's not rent geared to income, but it is subsidized, right?
Is school tax exempt?
Yes.
Do we have that?
Yes, on the first page. of
On the
assessor's
first page,
it's
okay.
40, yes,
So it was developed under the elderly and infirm person's housing.
that's correct, yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you, that's all my questions. Any summary required? All right, moving on to number 2. That is 533 Greenwood Place. And we're looking at assessed value. Please go ahead.
The subject property is 533 Greenwood Place. The roll number is 120-810-745-00. It's a residential apartment block that's 8 stories high. Built in 1981, it has 84 suites with 22 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $669 to get a potential income of $674,000. Use a 2.6% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $656,000. And we use a 58% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $271,000. Capped at 5%, we have an estimated market value of $5,431,000, so $65,000 per unit. Page 4 are our rent comparables, showing that the rents we've used are in line with the market or on the lower end of the range of market. On the bottom of page 4 are some expense comparables, which range from about 43 to 53%, and in this particular case, the model's applied at 58% expense ratio, so it's expenses that the models applied are higher than average. On page 5 and 6 is information on how we derive our cap rates. Page 8 is a picture of the subject property with its location. On page 9 is some information on the property. It's a seniors facility. On page 10 and 11 are the income and expense mailers submitted by the owner. And on page 12 are some CMHC rents. CMHC market rents. So CMHC is saying that the average market rent is about $919, and the models applied a rent of $669, so. We're looking at this as a below average apartment building. And as with the previous property, the rents are supported by the market, and the expenses applied are supported by the market, and the cap rate is in line with other similar properties. So I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $5,431,000.
Thank you. Everything? Mr. Story?
Thank you very much. Okay, now this is a senior's home, correct?
Seniors facility,
Okay, and it's run by a church group?
I don't know.
Okay, it's got a large chapel on site, you aware of that?
I am not aware.
All right, now, so we have, in this building, we have large common areas throughout, are you aware of that? Large dining rooms and meeting rooms and things of that nature?
I'm not aware.
That would not be typical of a standard apartment building, is that correct?
No.
Okay. Now again, actual year is 81, effective year is 81. Would that lead us to believe that there's no permitted work that would effectively elongate the effective useful life of this asset?
Not that we're aware of.
Okay.
Doesn't mean that they haven't done anything.
All right. Every year the city puts out a guide called the Guide to Income Producing Properties and Their Valuation, and one of the impediments to value that they note is a poor suite mix in the multifamily universe. Would you say this is an objectively poor suite mix? 76 one-bedrooms and 8 two-bedrooms.
I don't know, where does it say that?
Where does it say what?
The suite mix?
Oh, on your page
On my page what?
3. Number of units, 0 bachelors, 76.
Oh yeah, no, I'm talking about the income producing properties.
Oh, okay, well, every year your department puts out a document
Yeah.
called the Evaluation Guide to Income Producing Properties. And there are a number of independent variables, including size, location, area, and suite mix, that they mention as a potential impediment to value. So I'm asking, is this suite mix an impediment to value by your own admission?
I don't think so.
Okay. Are you aware that the one-bedrooms in this asset are 471 square feet?
I mean, if you have something showing that, you can present it. I'm not aware.
Okay. And the two-bedrooms are 614 square feet? You're not aware of that?
I'm not aware.
Are those typical sizes for the market? What we'll call
I
typical
would say
market?
that's a bit smaller than average.
Okay. Okay, to be certain. Now, your expense ratio, okay, all of these, in your value summary, are all these inputs modeled?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so you didn't overwrite any of them?
No.
Did you review them on a site-specific basis?
No.
Okay. So, I guess my only question there is,
Bless you.
bless you.
Thank you.
The expense ratio is almost 60%. Would logic not dictate that the capitalization rate ought to be adjusted as well? This is very low, it's 5%.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think if you're capturing certain things in the lower rents and in the higher expenses, then I think if you applied a higher cap rate to it, it'd be similar to like double and triple dipping. And so I think we've reflected this property in the operating income, and if you look at the building on page 8, it's a pretty standard masonry bearing newer building. So I think 5% is reasonable for this type of building.
Okay, but you said something about double or triple dipping, but you recognize that we're developing an NOI and then capitalizing it, so there's no double or triple dipping there, we're just trying to capitalize that income stream into value.
Well, if you're trying to capture certain things, if you've already captured it in the operating income, then you wouldn't need to capture it again in the cap rate.
Okay, so the cap rate, just so we're clear, is the numerical expression of risk, correct?
It's like the relationship between the operating income and the and what a sale price is.
Okay, well, I suggest that the cap rate is predicated on the principles of valuation and anticipation. Or, sorry, of anticipation and substitution. So when we look at a cap rate as an investor, we say, well, how durable is this income stream? Will it maintain over time? And will it appreciate over time? Would you agree with that? Is that part of what the cap rate is comprised of? Valuation theory?
Possibly.
Okay. All right. I think those are my questions. Thanks.
Mr. Fluffy?
Yeah, the building is 1981 and the previous one was 1988. Are they in the same age category?
Yeah, so they
And is that why you use the same cap rate?
are. Yes.
So there's a 7-year difference, and it's still, what is the category in this range that you
Or like 1976 and higher.
1976 till,
Actually, I'm not totally sure what that range is, but it is on the lower end of the range.
you said that this building was below average
Like,
condition.
in order to, the rents that we've applied are indicating as such, yes. Because a typical one bedroom would, a typical 1 or 2 bedroom wouldn't, as you can see on my page 12. According to CMHC, the market rent for this type of a suite mix would be about $919, and the model has applied a rate of $669.
All right, thank you very much. No further questions.
Mr. C?
So you have you inspected this property?
I have not.
Yeah. Is this mix with respect that it has 76 one-bedrooms and 8 two-bedrooms, is that something in the marketplace that you come across often? It has a huge disparity.
I think there is a mixed bag. There are apartments that have only 1 bedrooms, only 2 bedrooms, and then maybe just maybe a lot of ones and there's definitely a mixed bag. Yeah.
Are these attractive purchase? You have with like a more dominant.
I would say probably, as far as I can tell, any sort of multifamily that comes onto the market is I would say fairly attractive. Obviously, some more than others, but I would say there's anything that comes onto the market would garner interest.
Any questions?
And I don't have any additional questions. Would you like to go ahead, Mr. Slade?
Thank you very much. Okay. So again, we're at 533 Greenwood Place. This is commonly known as the McClure Place. And again, it is operated by the United Church. It was built in '81. There are 8 stories, so again, it's a high rise. 76 1-bedrooms and 8 2-bedrooms. I will not belabor the point, but I will suggest that if we are looking at this as a typical asset, that any next prudent purchaser would likely look at a huge amount of redemising this space in order to bring it to market standards. And there would be some reconfiguration of the entire building based on the fact that there's a church in the building, or a chapel, or whatever you will, and then a large number of common area rooms. That's more typical of a seniors housing resource than it is of a typical apartment. Okay, just to orient ourselves here, that's the east side of Greenwood Place between Portage and Wolseley Avenue. It's the Winnipeg 1 area. Again, we're presently being used as a subsidized seniors multifamily residential building. Site size according to the city of Winnipeg is 25,614 feet, and it is zoned RMFL. And again, 84 units, though they're drastically smaller in size than market. Now, originally we had applied a cap rate of 6% But we did take a second look in the office at this building, and we did confirm that the suite sizes were very small. This building is extremely atypical, so we have adjusted our cap rate to 6.5%. So we are using a value of $3,581,000 to value this asset. Now that's slightly lower than the 6%, but when we looked at all points considered, we thought that a 6% was simply too low, and that a market view would be no less than 6.5%. So for this asset, if you look at our income workup, we have agreed with the assessor, because when you have these subsidized rents, it would be distorted to use the actual rents that are coming in. They're not market. So our typical methodology is to accept the market rents, but then to apply our actual expenses. So we come to an expense ratio of 64.6. The assessment department's modeling 58.7, which is much higher than they generally go. So they are recognizing that there are added expenses in this asset, despite the fact that it's not from the 1960s or the 1970s. So we do recognize that, but when we use actuals as opposed to model figures, we come to an expense ratio of 64.6%. Giving us a net operating income of $232,770, and again capitalized into value with a 6.5 cap rate leads us to an indicated market value at the reference date of $3,581,000, and we do request that value be adjusted for this cycle. Now I have included the photos. Here's the church. We've got a church sign. This is next to the main entrance. You can see we've got some interior photos. A large common room, typical of this type of asset, and not typical of a standard apartment block. And some exterior photos, just so you get a sense of what we're looking at here. And I will entertain any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Wong.
Sir, just what is the new value?
$3,581,000.
So this is a senior nonprofit,
That's correct.
and you feel it's appropriate to use senior nonprofit expenses to try to estimate value?
Using actual expenses, yeah, I think that's appropriate.
Okay. No further questions.
Mr. Sawatsky?
No, I have no questions, thank you.
Mr. Steele?
Question, what square footage for the one bedroom?
The one bedrooms, 471.
471 square feet?
Yes. Which would be more typical of I would say that's more typical of a studio apartment in the regular market, or a bachelor, but it's not a one bedroom.
It's really a two bedroom, a 614?
Which again would be likely more typical of a bachelor one bedroom.
I apologize, have you been in this?
I've not been inside, but I've seen a number of photos of the interior, and then so the photos that were published, I included in my brief, so you can get a sense of the interior.
What, your opinion, what would you say the condition is of this location?
Well, that's a good question. It's not competing for tenants in a traditional way, so I think it serves its purpose, to be certain. But if we were to take it and put it on the market and see how the free market would respond to it, I think you'd have to do a fair bit of work to it to bring it to current market taste. Just the the amount of common area alone and the suite mix would be an issue for any next purchaser. If somebody looked at this, they'd say, well, we're going to likely have to make these suites much larger. We're going to have to reconfigure some of this common area. Apartment buildings don't tend to have these large kind of social areas, and they certainly don't have houses of worship in them either, so that would likely have to be re-demised. So when we look at how a next potential purchaser would look at it, we think that there's a fair bit of work that would have to be done to bring this to a more typical standard, I would suggest.
Was there a basement here?
I don't think there is. No, I'm sorry, there is a basement. It looks to be about half the size of the planned area, so it'd be a half
Half-size basement?
Yeah.
Thanks very much. That's all. Any questions?
Mr. Shorty, how would you think this location compares with the previous one being on Sargent? This
Certainly
one
superior.
being,
The
pardon me?
location would be superior.
The location
one on
is
Sargent,
superior?
Absolutely, yeah. The one on Sargent is in a, call it a more of an industrial zone, and it is zoned M1 for manufacturing, so that alone, the fact that it's a legal non-conforming use is certainly not a positive. This is, locationally, this is, I'd say, pretty good probably. It's, you're on the residential street. It's good it's good if you're in the apartment. It might not be great if you're in a house next to an apartment block, yeah, no, I think, I don't have any issues with the location.
And you don't think that those locational issues offset some of the cap rate issues that you've talked about?
Sorry, if we're comparing those two?
With the previous building, which you left at a 6%,
would-
and this one you moved to a 6.5.
So to be fair, I did put a call in to find out what the suite size was for the
Right.
previous, and I didn't have a response in time. I would have adjusted that one as well, I think, if I had a better sense of the configuration of the interior. So, and generally, when we are looking at social housing, we do a number of social housing assets, 6.5 is typical for a cap rate that we apply, so.
Regardless of location.
Not regardless of location, but we do adjustments based on any sort of issues that we might have. If there's a poor location, then we certainly adjust for that. But this is not a locational issue. I think this is more, the crux of the issue here is that the interior would have to be completely redemised to be market standard.
Okay, thank you. Any summary required?
No, I'm good, thank you.
We're just going to take a short break so I can check on my sister.
Good luck.
We're running a little late here. All right, thank you. I'll call the hearing back to order. We're looking at 850 Scotland, and we're looking at assessed value.
Okay, the subject property is 850 Scotland. The roll number is 120-153-18000. It's a residential apartment block that's 5 stories high. It's built in 1975 and has 49 suites with 17 indoor parking stalls and 30 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is our income valuation summary. We use average rent of $1,030 with a potential income of $606,000. We use a 2.4% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $591,000. We use a 42% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $341,000. Kept at 5% to have an estimated market value of $6,835,000, about $139,000 per unit. On page 4 are our rent comparables, so that's the rents we used are in line with what's in the market. On page 5 is a summary of the income expenses submitted by the owner. Their estimated operating income is about $351,000, which is about $10,000 higher than what the model is estimated at $341,000. So when you look at the actual performance, it does support the model. Top 5 and 6, or on page 6 and 7 is information on how we derived our cap rates and some cap rate sales. On page 9 is a picture of the subject property with its location. And on page 10 are some interior photos of the subject property from the property manager's website. last few pages are the income expense mailers submitted by the owner. So when you look at the actual performance of the subject property, it supports the model, and I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $6,835,000.
Thank you, Mr. Story.
Thank you very much. Okay, just in the interest of brevity, I think all we're, excuse me, all we're really talking about here is cap rate. Is that correct?
I don't know.
Okay, well, my NOI is higher than yours, so I don't think you're gonna argue that. And then
Well, I'm not arguing your side of things.
I'm just thinking, so I'll keep it to cap rate. Now, the age of this building, 1975, built in 75, effective year is 75. Again, no age variance, so no reason to believe any sort of work was done to extend the economic life. Is that correct?
Like I said, I don't know. Sometimes work is done without purpose.
Okay, but by the model's estimation, it's true that it's vintage, correct?
Yes.
Excuse me. Okay, and on page 3, are these all modeled inputs?
I believe so.
Okay, so you haven't overwritten them?
No.
Okay. And have you done a site-specific analysis of this property based on what the model is suggesting?
Well, we've looked at their income and expense mailers, and they seem to be, their operating income seems to be about 10,000 higher than what the model is estimated. So.
Okay, that's fine. Now you've done a recalculation here, but that's not a line-by-line stabilization, to be fair, is it?
It is what it is.
Okay. Fair enough. On page 7, now I've spoken about your cap rates, but let's talk just about the two that seem reasonable. 333 Ward, I believe that's understated, it ought to be 5.15, and 277 Langside is okay with that. So I guess what I'm asking is, if this asset is built in 1975, do you think it's appropriate that 333 Ward carries the same cap rate? 333 Ward being built in the last 10 years, it's in South San Hotel, it's got all sorts of amenities, it's effectively a new asset. Does it not seem disjointed to you that that asset would carry a cap rate of 5%, but then the subject also has a 5% cap by the model's estimation?
I don't think it's disjointed. I don't know if you've seen some appraisals, but some of the appraisals that I've seen where they are estimating values for newer buildings like 323 Ward, they actually use sales that are older of vintage, of the exact vintage as the subject property to try to establish the cap rate. And so, yeah, it actually seems fairly consistent.
Okay, so you think that 333 Ward would be equivalent in terms of risk to 850 Scotland?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I suppose those are my questions. Thank you.
This is lucky.
So you're not aware of any rentals done to this property? No permits?
I did inspect this property in 2014, and there was renovation work done.
Do you know what type of renovation work was done at that point?
Unfortunately, I did not put the permits in here that might indicate the type of work done. So I actually don't know.
Well, looking at your page 10, do you think that bathroom has been renovated, or the kitchen? Or is that 1975 vintage?
It appears, I would say it's newer. I don't believe it's 1975. If you look at the shower handle
Right.
and the flooring in the bedroom.
Okay, thank you. I had one question, but I forgot.
Hopefully you remember in the next minute.
And I remembered it. Thank you.
Mr. Steele?
Do you know the size of the suites here?
I
Actual square footage?
I do not know.
No.
I remember my question now.
Okay.
Perfect.
This is not seniors' housing.
No, this is a
Not
standard
like-
apartment building.
Standard.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. There's a basement here. This is basement just for storage, you know? Like the square footage here.
Yeah.
Is it for storage or is it just mechanical?
The basement? Basement area?
Yes.
No, I do not know.
There's indoor parking at the part of the basement, or is that separate?
Like there is a, I guess it is a little bit lower level. There's a, there, on page 10, there's a picture of the entrance on the top picture on the left. And on page 9, you can see there's, on the top picture, on the right, that would be, I guess, you can see the ramp leading into the interior parkade.
Okay, sure. That's true.
Yeah, it doesn't appear that there would be any units in the basement.
That's all. Any questions, Mr. Chair?
Okay. On your cap rate scale, you don't have any of the year cutoffs. But if I understand what you said to the applicant earlier, you're saying that a 1979 building and a 2006 building would carry the same cap rate?
I'm not totally sure where that cutoff is, but I can assure you that we do treat, like, if it is built in the same year and it is similar, it will have the same cap rate. I don't know where that cutoff is.
You don't know where the cutoff is? You don't know at what point, how new a building would be to garner a lower cap rate than 5?
A lower cap rate than 5 is generally for buildings that are smaller in size.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
And if say a smaller building had a 4.8 cap rate, like if a 1950 building had a 4.8 cap rate, a newer building would have, a newer small building would have a 4.3 cap rate.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, that's all my questions. Mr. Story?
Yes, thank you very much. Okay. 850 Scotland Avenue. So we have a building built in 1975, 5-story high-rise, 31 one-bedrooms, 11 two-bedrooms, and 7 three-bedroom units. As of the April 1, 2018 reference date, the city is suggesting a value of $6,835,000, and you're here to request that value be amended to $6,089,000. So we are on the south side of Scotland. That's the southeast corner of Wentworth in Scotland in the Earl Grey neighborhood. Again, we're using this property as a multifamily residential building, and it does compete on the open market. The City of Winnipeg records indicate that the site size is 24,400 square feet, and it is zoned RMFM for multifamily. And again, we have 49 units, 31 one-bedrooms, 11 two-bedrooms, and 7 three-bedroom units. We have 17 indoor parking stalls and 30 outdoor parking stalls. Now, I will suggest that this is all captured in the rent and the marketability of the property, but there ought to be some consideration given for the fact that we have a parking garage. Now, the enemies of concrete in the grand scheme of things are heat, moisture, and pressure. So when we have an indoor parking garage, that becomes a carrying cost for the owner. They surely generate some income from it, but it does equate to risk in the long run, especially if it doesn't mean that the rents are being generated or above typical market had it not been there. Okay, so if we go to our table, I believe the question was asked about where the city brackets their cap rate table. Now, the thing that's peculiar is the city draws a distinction between 1974 and 1975. We find that that seems to be a bit illogical based on the fact that most of the city's apartment inventory was built in the 1970s. So to suggest that a building from 74 ought to be treated differently than 75 or 73 to 76 doesn't appear to represent a market view, particularly when a huge amount of multifamily property was built in the 1970s. Okay, so if you come with me to my income workup, you'll see that our potential gross market rents are actually higher than what the city is suggesting. Or I'm sorry, we're slightly below. We're at 603, they're at 606, but we're very close. When we add in our parking and laundry revenue, the question was asked if what's happening in the basement. There's storage, mechanical, and laundry in the basement. And we do recognize that we pick that up as income. We add that to our effective gross income, which gives us a figure of $619,770, where the model is suggesting $591. So we always use actuals, even if it's not necessarily in the interest of reducing the value. We try to be as fair as possible. Now, when we look at our expense ratio, after adding our actual stabilized expenses over a 3-year horizon, we come to a rate of 43.5. The city's at 42.2, so we're not worlds away, but we do end up with a higher NOI than the city. We're at 351.04. The city's model suggests 341,770. So again, the material issue here is the cap rate. The city has once again applied a modeled cap rate of 5%. We're saying that this asset ought to carry a cap rate of no less than 5.75. So with all those factors taken into consideration, we come to an indicated market value at the 2018 April 1 reference date of $6,088,762. Rounded to $6,089,000, and we do respectfully submit that this board amend that value for this cycle. Now, you can see that this there has been some refreshing of these suites. We've looked at the photos in the assessor's brief. Now, what I'll suggest is when we refresh these suites and do cosmetic work, that's captured in the rents, that's captured in staving off vacancy, but we don't necessarily extend the useful economic life until we start looking at foundation issues, the roof, the envelope of the building. So yes, to be certain, this is not true to the vintage of 1975 by any stretch of the imagination. It would be an upgrade that was done, I believe, in 14-15. But again, it's important to recognize that that's captured in the rent, that we're maintaining a market standard. And so we do suggest that the value of this asset not exceed $6,089,000. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Rowe?
No questions.
Mr. Swatke?
Do you view this as a good mix of apartments?
The suites? You know, it looks, just as a quick check, see how the market is responding to it. Yeah, it appears reasonable. Yeah, no, I think it's very good. The 7 3-bedrooms, 3 bedrooms are a little less typical nowadays, but if they're renting them out and they're successful with it, then yeah, it appears that the market is responding in a favorable way, so we have no issue there.
And the vacancy rate, 2.4 is...
Yeah. So we do recognize that over the economic life of the asset, we will have periods where vacancy is higher, and then periods where vacancy is low or nil. So the point of adding that 2.4, every property is allowed vacancy allowances because we're trying to capitalize that vacancy into perpetuity. So we're not disputing the assessment department's 2.4. We think that's probably reasonable for this asset.
Can you tell me a bit more about the garage parking and the risk? Is there evidence that you've got there right now that there's some
No,
risk down the road?
No, I will suggest anecdotally that the parking lots, when you deal with parkades, and this is a smaller one, to be certain, there's only 17 stalls, so it's not a huge issue, but I will say that if, where we do have these types of structures, there's going to be repairs that are, that wouldn't be borne by an owner of an apartment without that added asset. There is income that comes with it, but there may be an element of risk there. I haven't made any adjustment for it, I'm just mentioning that there's a parking.
And you're not aware of any potential issues that are
well,
facing the owner at this point?
no, but I think that if I were a purchaser, I would see a parking garage built in 1975, and I would want to do a condition report on it.
Are you aware of whether he's made any improvements to the parking garage?
No, that I don't know, no.
Thank you, no further questions.
Mr. Seal?
Do you know the actual size of the suites, the actual square footage of these
No,
suites?
I know the model is suggesting 900 is average, but that would be distorted by the 3-bedroom suites. If there's no issue, we don't really look at that, we just assume that it's market standard, so. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Story, taking a look at the pictures and combining that with your page, your income page.
Yep.
Looking at 2015, we had a 15% vacancy. Would that suggest that
Renovation.
there was renovations taking place in 14, 15, and,
That's what yeah.
yeah, okay.
So some suites will be vacant for a time as they need them, so that would be typical.
So that would be why you haven't used the average, you've just gone to the 2.4.
Yeah, because that's not something that an owner would look at in perpetuity. That would be an abnormality that we have the benefit of smoothing out by stabilization.
Okay, thank you, that's all my questions. Move along to 879 Warsaw Avenue, and I believe you have a recommendation here. So you actually have the recommendation is in, the workup is actually this one then?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
The subject property is 879 Warsaw. The roll number is 120-231-05000. It's a residential apartment block that's 3 stories high. It's built in 1913, but we have an effective year built in 1973. It has 30 suites with no outdoor parking. On page 3 is our original income valuation summary. The operating income is about $168,000. On page 4 are our rent comparables, and the rents we've used are in line with what's in the market. On page 5 is a summary of their income and expenses, and their estimated operating income is about $160,000, which is less than what the model is estimated at $168,000. So I'd like to recommend a revised value of $3,021,000.
And Mr. Wong, that $3,021,000 is based on a lower income?
Yes.
You've lowered the rents to come to that number?
Yes. You can see it on page 5, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Questions, Mr. Story? Or how do you feel about the recommendation?
No, I appreciate it, but I'd like to proceed.
You will proceed on my question.
Okay. Sorry, is Mr. Wong presenting his brief? Or?
Do you want to present further?
Just down page 9 is a picture of the subject property with its location. The remainder of my brief are the income statements provided by the owner. performance supports the revised value, and I ask that you accept the revised value of $3,021,000.
Okay. Mr. Story?
Thank you. Excuse me. Okay, actual year is 1913, effective year is 1973, so can you give us a sense of what gave rise to that age variance?
There was some renovation work done. It was inspected in 2014.
Okay. Was it structural, or was it cosmetic, or what sort of work was done there? That, do you have that in your notes?
Windows, kitchens, cabinet counters. Windows, kitchen cabinets, counters, bathroom, toilet sinks. The roof was done in 2013.
Okay, all right. And now, just so we're clear, when the city, is that number 73, it seems a bit odd. So when the city adds an age variant, that's based on somebody's sort of best judgment, is that?
Correct.
Okay, and they said 73, but not 75, something like that. So it's just sort of is it a rent? Is it based on 60 years, or is it, how do we get to that number 73? I was interested in that.
Like I said, it's based off of the assessor's judgment.
Okay, that's fine. Now, this building has no parking associated with it?
Correct.
Okay, and it's Class D construction, correct?
Yes.
So is it safe to say that we've done some roof work, we've done the windows, we've done cosmetic upgrades to the suites, but the bones of the building are still wood frame from 1913, correct?
Likely, yes.
Okay, and do you think that going forward that would lead to higher expenses than something newer and something with a different class, perhaps masonry?
It's difficult to say.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Again, page 3, these inputs are modeled, is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so one of the things that I always notice is when that expense ratio is an even number, it seems like it's probably been altered.
Yeah, I looked into this one, and yeah, we actually do have a model expense ratio that's 45%.
So that's just, the model just happened to kick out an even number on that one?
Yes.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm sure you've seen the 45% several times.
Yeah, I tend to see 45.29 or 0.68 or something like that. Okay, that's okay. Now, the suite mix, all one bedrooms, correct?
Yes.
And is that, do you think that's a poor suite mix, a good suite mix? You think that's, how does the market view that suite mix in your estimation?
I don't really view suite mix as any sort of a deterrent or.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Now, okay, I think that, these are my questions.
I've seen buildings with, say, quote-unquote poor suite mixes, and they have very little vacancy, so.
Probably a function of their rents, right?
Well, that's what I mean, but that's what I mean, it's like, just because it has a poor suite mix, it doesn't necessarily.
Limits your rental revenue, right? It's a risk. It's a risk to the appreciation of the income stream. Okay, thank you very much.
Question, Mr. Story?
I know you made a recommendation to come down, that's fine. I have no further questions, thank you.
Mr. Seal?
We know the square footage of these one bedrooms.
I do not.
No further questions.
And I have no further questions. Mrs. Story, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we are at 879 Warsaw Avenue. So we have a 3.5-story walkout built originally in 1914 with some renovations done in 2012 that we've heard of. So the city has applied an age variance to 1973. Total gross floor area is approximately 17,300 square feet, and the property has 31 bedroom suites. I have not verified this, but it appears the model is suggesting that those are 577 square foot suites, and that's likely the right number. We don't dispute that. For the purpose of this report, we are disputing the assessor's cap rate of 5.3%. We're instead applying a cap rate of 6% based on our study, which has been provided. So we do suggest that 6% is more reasonable, and that falls within the bracket of 60 to 74. Again, 60 to 74, 60 to 97, we say, well, somewhere between 5.75 to 6, we make adjustments on a site-specific basis. Now, we do recognize that the bones of this building are from 1913, 1914. There's no parking, and the suite mix, I would suggest, is not ideal by any stretch of the imagination. So, when we go through our stabilized income statement, we can see that when we get right down to it, the NOI that we're using is 164. The assessor was using 168, is now using 160, so we're well within range. This again becomes an issue of cap rate. We're suggesting a 6% cap rate is more appropriate. The city's saying 5.3. So when we take our NOI of $164,015 and capitalize it with a 6% cap rate, we come to an indicated market value of $2,733,581, rounded to $2,734,000. And we do respectfully submit that the value ought not to exceed $2,734,000. I've got some photos. These are post-reno photos you can see on my brief starting on page 9. I'll leave that with you, and then the balance of the brief is just the financials. So barring any questions, that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wong.
No questions.
Mr. Sawatsky.
Can I assume that there are units in the basement of this building, that they have windows?
Yeah, it would appear that way, but let me see. I think I can see on the rent roll. They don't have it on the rent roll, but I think that's probably correct. I would be speculating, but based on those windows at the front, I think that's probably correct. There would be basement suites. It looks to be that way.
Thank you. No further questions?
Mr. Seal.
No questions, Mr. Chair.
And I have no question. We carry on. We have 346 Arbuthnot. Mr. Wong.
The subject property is 346 Arbuthnot. The roll number is 120-210-55000. It's a residential apartment block that's 3 stories high. It was built in 1914, but we have an effective year built of 1972. There are 23 suites with 10 outdoor parking stalls. Page 3 is our income valuation summary. We used average rents of $1,123 to get a potential income of $310,000. Used a 2.4% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $202,000. We used a 44% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $168,000. Kept at 5.3%, we have an estimated market value of $3,172,000, which is about $137,000 per unit. On page 4 are our rent comparables, showing that the rents we've used are in line with what's in the market. On page 5 is a summary of the income and expenses submitted by the owner. Their estimated operating income is about $165,000, which is in line with what the model is estimated at $168,000. On page 6 and 7 is information on how we derive our cap rates and some cap rate sales. On page 9 is a picture of the subject property with its location. On page 10 to 13 are the income statements provided by the owner. And on page 14 is the permit that was taken out in 2013 for the interior alterations, which included kitchen cabinets, flooring, painting, electrical upgrades, and window replacement. and when you look at the actual performance, it supports the model, and I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $3,172,000.
Mr. Story?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so this is very similar to the last one we looked at. So we can agree here that the bones of this building are 105 years old, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And we do have some outdoor parking, it's fine. And there are suites in the basement for this one, correct?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Have you visited this property?
No, but
Okay.
my colleague has.
Okay, all right. Now, page 3, the value summary, are these all modeled inputs?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Now, the market value per suite at 137.9, does that seem high to you?
I think it's within the range. It might be on the high, it's definitely on the higher end of the range.
Jumped out at me as being extremely high. Okay, now, that's fine, I don't think you're rank comps, but that's okay, we're using actuals, so I'm not gonna dwell on that. Next thing. Those are my questions, thank you.
Mr. Sawatsky?
Got no questions, thank you.
Mr. Seal?
Whereabouts is this location listed?
It's near the Corden area, between Corden and Grant,
So,
Pembina Highway.
okay, so we'll say, is that River Heights?
Saying, it's,
Fort Rouge?
yeah, it's saying potentially Fort Rouge. Yeah.
That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Wong, I'm not sure if I missed this, but did you mention what was going on in 2017 according to?
I actually did not mention it. I'm not sure what's going on.
So you compared this to 2015 income as opposed to 2016 or 2017?
Well, yeah, 2016 to 2017 is, there's something wrong with those numbers.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Mr. Story?
Thank you very much. Okay, so 346 of Bucknot. Now, we have a 3.5-story structure built in 1914. The city has applied an effective age of 1972. We have 1 bachelor suite, 16 one-bedrooms, and 6 two-bedrooms. The city is suggesting a 2020 value of $3,172,000, and we are requesting $2,385,000. Okay, so again, we're at the southwest corner of Fleet and Arbuthnot, and 3.5 stories, effective age of 72, based on some work that was done in 2012. The building is presently being used as a multifamily residential building, and according to the City of Winnipeg Property and Taxation Department records, the site size is 8,749 square feet and is zoned R1. The subject property has a total, again, of 23 units. Now, for the purpose of this report, the city is once again using a 5.3 cap rate. We are suggesting that a rate of 6% is more appropriate. Generally, an asset true to this vintage of the early 70s would be between 5.75 to 6. So we've skewed to the high end based on the fact that this is a remediated building. So there are elements of it that are still, again, 105 years old. Now the question of our income information has come up. There's a change in management, and the say that some of the information that we had was not reliable. So we took the reliable information that we had was just from our December 17 rent roll. I've just made a note in the remarks section. So what we've done is we've taken the income for the rent roll of December 31st, 2017, the last full year before the reference date, and just multiplied that by 12, assuming that was the new reality of the asset going forward. So we have used that number, and that's why everything is kind of seems a little off here. But again, there was a sort of a change in property management, and some of those records were not reliable. So we've done our best to come to a reasonable number. Okay, now we've taken our actual expenses as we've typically done, and we come to an expense ratio of 42.6. That's slightly lower than the city's model of 44.5, which gives us a net operating income of 143,125, where the city is modeled 168. So with all those points taken into consideration, we capitalize our NOI with a 6% cap rate to recognize the fact that this is an older building. And it's a slight adjustment, it's well within our range. We come to a indicated market value of $2,385,419, rounded to $2,385,000, and we do respectfully submit that the value of this asset be amended for this realty cycle. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Long, do you have questions?
Do you know why their income has dropped so significantly in 2017?
Yeah, I'm going to say that those statements were not accurate. We're all fairly aware there was some fairly public issue with some property management things that were going on, and that's all I'll say about that. But those are not reliable, so we have used the last most reliable data set that we have. Yes, I agree. If you just looked at that without knowing that, it would be seems a bit odd to be certain. So we've tried to correct that as best we can.
That's all my questions.
Mr. Swatney?
Yes, in terms of the age of this building and its construction compared to some of the other ones of the same age, we talked about, they were wood construction.
Correct.
This one is masonry, bearing walls.
Yeah.
Does this mean that this may have a longer life than the wood construction?
I would say so, yeah.
So the risk is?
It would be diminished, yeah. It would be diminished. It would be, if you had, by the principle of substitution, if you had two exact buildings with all other points being exactly the same, you would certainly, you would elect to go for a masonry versus wood frame, especially from, 1913.
Does that, in your opinion, change the cap rate for this building?
No, I think when we're talking about a 25 basis point adjustment on either of them, it's reasonable. I would say though that it would be more desirable objectively to have masonry construction for a building of this vintage versus wood frame, to be certain. But I think that applying a 6% cap rate to both of them is completely reasonable.
Thank you. No further questions.
Mr. Seal?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
And I have no questions. Moving to 830 Corridor Avenue. Mr. Wong, when you're ready.
The subject property is 830 Corden. The real number is 120-226-730-00. It's a residential apartment block that's 3 stories high. It's built in 1931, but we have an effective built in 1972. There are 30 suites with 26 outdoor parking spaces. On page 3 is our income valuation summary. We used average rent of $970 to get a potential income of $349,000. We have 2.4% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $341,000. We used a 45% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $187,000. Kept at 5.3% of an estimated market value of $3,540,000, which is about $118,000 per unit. On page 4 are our rent comparables, and that the rents we use are in line with what's in the market. On page 5 is a summary of the income and expenses submitted by the owner. Their estimated operating income is about $201,000. which is a little bit higher than what the model is estimated at 187,000. On page 6 and 7 is information on how we derived our cap rates. On page 9 is a picture of the subject property with its location. On page 10 to 13 are the income statements provided by the owner.
Excuse me, sorry.
And the last page is the permit that was taken out for the renovation work that was done to the building in 2013. So when you look at their actual performance, their estimated operating income is about 201,000, which is higher than what the model is estimated at 187,000. So their actual performance supports the model and asks that you maintain the assessed value at $3,540,000.
Thank you. Mr. Story, question?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so again, we see that there's a permit, so it was somebody's opinion that the effective year ought to be changed to 1972 as opposed to 1974 or 75. That's how we came to that age variant, just so we're clear, is that correct?
Yes.
Did you review the mailer for this property?
Yes.
Okay, and did you see that they're reporting that there are 29 suites? Well, 30 suites, right? Just a small issue, but must that be corrected? It would make some difference, I would imagine.
I imagine it would.
Pardon me?
I imagine it would.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Now, they're all one-bedroom suites, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and is it safe to assume now that all of your parameters entered into your valuation summary are modeled?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Okay, so you said that this is not a line-by-line stabilization in your summary on page 5. That's fine. Okay, now just, I know this building fairly well. It's called the Layton. I knew somebody who lived here. These are older photos that you're using, is that correct? It's photos from about 2012 or before.
On my page 9.
Page 9, yeah.
It's from, I'm not sure what year it's from, but it was from the property manager's website.
You sure?
I believe so, yes.
All right, so that's a pre-rental photo. All right, those are my questions, thanks.
Mr. Swetsky?
This difference of 30 or 29 units,
Yes.
what kind of information do you have, and have you verified it recently as to what the number of units actually are?
I haven't verified it, but sometimes the owners, they might report things slightly differently than we might. But typically, you know, when we put properties onto the assessment roll, we verify the suite counts, and so I'm not totally sure what the owner is why they're putting 29, but as far as we know, it is 30, and even with regards to the permit on the very last page, it says interior renovation and occupancy to 30 existing units. So that's why it's like sometimes you have to take that 29 with a grain of salt sometimes.
And your 5.3 cap rate is based on what factors?
The age and location.
The age now is 72,
Yes,
and location?
it's in the Corden area. Yeah, like Little Italy.
All right. Thank you. No further questions.
Mr. Seal?
Are there basement suites in this building?
I appear so, yes.
Any questions
don't have any additional questions. Please go ahead, Mr. Story.
Thank you very much. Okay. 830 Gordon Avenue, this is a building in Belayton, built in 1931, and renovated in 2012 or 14, no, 2012. It's got 29 one-bedroom suites, and the city has added there's applied an age variant of 1972. You can see on my page 1, this is what the actual exterior looks like. They painted it, so you can tell this is a post-rental photo. 3.5 stories. The city is suggesting a value of $3,540,000, and we're suggesting a value of $3,194,000. Okay, the site size, according to Winnipeg Property and Taxation Department records, is 18,062 square feet, and it is zoned C2. It is on a commercial stretch of Corridon, and it's an objectively desirable location. Okay, so for the purpose of this report, the city is using a cap rate of 5.3%. We're disputing this. We're saying that a rate of 6% is more appropriate, and so we've applied that to our valuation. Now, in the grand scheme of things, our NOI comes out higher than the city's, albeit only slightly. We're at 191,644 using actuals, where the city is at 187,596. So again, the material difference is the cap rate. We believe the, as I mentioned in the first document, just to revisit that for a moment, the cap rates that the city is using this cycle are aggressively low, and they're, in my opinion, they are depressed, and that's caused a rift between, we're using our 6%, they're using 5.3. Again, that model appears to be distorted by intent to renovate, sales that were purchased with the intention to renovate. So we continue to use a 6% cap rate, and when we apply that to our net operating income, we come to a value of $3,194,000, and we do ask that the value be amended for this cycle. I've got some interior photos. These are the actual current marketing photos. Let's see. Nice shape, very nice building. Got some old parquet floors, which may be from the 70s, and maybe they're back again, I'm not sure. But you can see the quality of the interior. And again, that's reflected in the rent, that's reflected in the low vacancy. This is again the exterior of the building. This is the present day. And, I'm happy to entertain any questions. Thank you very much.
Mr. Wong.
No questions.
Mr. Zawacki.
No questions?
Mr. Steele.
No questions.
And I have no questions. Does anybody need a break?
Good idea. Sure.
Okay.
I'll take it.
Call the hearing back to order. We're looking at 251 Coburn Street North and assessed value. Please go ahead, Mr. Wong.
Okay, the subject property is 251 Cockburn. The roll number is 120-222-580-00. It's a residential apartment that's 2 stories high. It's built in 1953 and had 21 units with 13 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is their income valuation summary. We use average rent of $847. You get a potential income of $213,000. We use a 2.4% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $208,000. We use a 45% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $114,000. Capped at 5.3% of an estimated market value of $2,164,000. So $102,000 per unit. On page 4.
Or is there a recommendation, Mr. Wong?
Yes. On page 4 are rent variables, and that the rent reviews are in line with what's on the market. On page 5 is a summary of the income and expenses submitted by the owner. Their estimated operating income is about $107,000, which is less than what the model is estimated at $114,000. So I'd like to recommend a revised value of $2,031,000.
Mr. Shorty?
I appreciate it, but I'd like to proceed.
Okay,
Thank you.
please continue.
page 6 and 7 is the information on how we derived our cap rates. On page 9 is a picture of the subject property with its location. The remainder of my brief are the income statements submitted by the owner. When you look at their actual performance, it supports the revised value, and ask that you accept the revised value of $2,031,000.
Thank you. Mr. Story, questions?
Yes, just very quickly. Okay, again, this is a cap rate issue. Now the effective age is 53 and the actual year is 53. So there's no age variant or permits that would suggest that this ought to have a age variant, is that correct?
According to our records, no.
Okay, and it is wood frame, or wood construction, so it's Class D, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Have you visited this site?
No.
Actually been inside this one. Now, are any of these, from your income value summary, are these all modeled or are any of these overwritten?
I believe they're modeled.
That 45% expense ratio, that's modeled as well?
Yes.
Okay. Did you review the mailing, the income expense mailing?
Yes.
And did you notice that there's a higher than average degree of discounts?
There are discounts.
Okay. And now on your, this, we've done this exercise showing me 3 years. You notice that we've got an operating income that's not appreciating. We've got an operating income that's at 193.9, then 200, and then back to 193.9. So part of the cap rate is based on the potential to appreciate, the income stream's potential to appreciate. Do you not think when we see this that we should probably adjust the cap rate from what the model is initially suggesting?
No.
No? Okay. All right. All right, and I guess that will be the balance of my questions. Thank you.
Mr. Watley?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Seelan?
I do have one question. The reduction in your total was for what reason?
It's on page 5. Their estimated operating income is lower than what the model is estimated.
So you're using their lower NOI,
Yes.
107,
Yes.
634?
Yes.
Thank you. No further
Mr.
questions.
Seelan?
Sorry, are there basement suites in this building?
There's still yes.
Not sure if you said had to inspect this location.
I have not.
You haven't. What would you say is the overall condition for this location?
I would say it's good.
Is it good?
I haven't inspected it, but I've walked by it several times. I like it because it's right in the heart of Corden Avenue, and so.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. I have no further questions. Please continue, Mr. Story.
Perfect, okay. All right, so we are on the east side of Coburn Street North at the southeast corner of Corden and Coburn. It's a 2.5-story structure. It's built in '53. Again, it is, appears to be wood frame construction, stick frame with a brick veneer. It's presently being used as a multifamily residential building. Site size, according to the records, is 10,831, and it is zoned C2. And subject property has a total of 21 units. Okay, the city is using a 5.3 cap. We are suggesting 6.25. Now, this is based largely on age and general condition. I would suggest that it's in fair condition. I have been inside this building. Certainly, it's, locationally, it is good, to be certain. But we have a building that's built in 1953 with no structural upgrades. So we don't adjust from our bracket, but our bracket would suggest that assets of this vintage, barring any sort of unforeseen or atypical abnormalities, would likely carry a cap rate or ought to carry a cap rate of 6.25, so we have applied that. The resulting market value as of April 1, 2018 is therefore $1,657,750, rounded to $1,658,000. So we have, again, we've used our methodology, which is to take 3 years of income, stabilize that into what we will call a most typical year, and then to capitalize that with an appropriate cap rate. We're a little ways away here. An interesting thing is the city's model doesn't necessarily capture discounts. It's not captured under the vacancy, collection loss, and bad debt. So maybe that's where some of the divergence is occurring. Our effective gross income after parking and laundry is factored in is 194. The city's at 2085. Our expense ratio is 46.6, which I would suggest is a little bit low actually for a building built in 53, but that's what it is. Based on actuals, the city's using 45% even. Our repair and maintenance budget here is just a tick shy of 1,300 per suite, which is well within range. So again, the issue that we're dealing with is there's a difference in our NOI. Our actuals are showing us 103,609. The city's model is suggesting 114,691, and again, based on the vintage, the construction, and just what our market indicators are telling us, a cap rate of 6.25 is appropriate. So again, we come to a value of $1,657,750, and we do respectfully submit that a value of $1,658,000 is appropriate. We've got some photos, also just the exterior. Again, I'm not disputing the fact that the location is desirable, but it is an older building that should be captured. The suites have been refreshed, good, and those photos are there for your perusal as well. And I will take any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Bond,
No questions.
Mr. Slotky.
NOIs. The city brought theirs down to 107 based on the analysis. I assume that's a blended income or value on those 3 years that are on page 5. And you're saying the actual is 103. Is that this last year's current?
That 103, that's actually, okay, so just so you can see here, what we do is we add these expenses at 90,495, and then we subtract that from our EGI, which is line 13. So I suppose what's sort of interesting is the city applies a 45% expense ratio to the EGI to come to the expenses. We calculate our expenses, compare them to our EGI, and then calculate that number. So the methodology is slightly different, but it is the difference between using actuals on a site-specific basis versus using a mass appraisal model. So that's how those numbers come to be.
Those two numbers are very close.
Well, they're in 10,000 apart, so when we capitalize them, it does make a material difference, even if we use the same cap rate.
The 107 versus the 103.
Oh, I'm sorry. City's number.
107.
107. Yeah, I mean, that's fine, but we do stand by the actuals. So, and we would stand by that number if it were lower than 103 as well.
You're not accepting the city's reduced rate based on the change in the NOI that they suggest?
No, we're going to suggest that our actual calculated NOI is more appropriate in this scenario, yes.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Mr. Phelan.
This building was renovated based on the pictures.
Yeah.
What year was it renovated?
About renovated, it's been certainly been refreshed, and that was,
Refreshed.
looks like the work started in, I mean, they started doing electrical in '05 and '08. That's fire alarm, so that's not, and they started doing plumbing in 19. It's hard to say, it's cosmetic work, so it's not permanent. I would say probably in the last 5 years or so. Based on similar upgrades, I would say that this is probably in and around 14, be speculating, but that's, and that would, again, that would be captured in these 3 years of income, so.
Thank you, Ms. Chair.
I have no further questions. And we'll go to the last property, which is 272 Coburn.
The subject property is 272 Cockburn. The roll number is 120-224-43000. It's a residential apartment block that's 3 stories high. It's built in 1913 and has 36 suites. If you go to page 5, their estimated operating income based off of their income and expenses is $175,000, and it's lower than what the model has estimated, $193,000. So I'd like to provide recommend a revised value of $2,659,000.
Thank you, Mr. Story.
Thank you, I will accept that quantum. Thank you.
Right. Any questions from the panel?
What was that number again? 2 million?
It's on page 5.
2658.
2659 rounded.
Thank you, I have no questions.
Mr. Steeland?
No questions.
And I have no question, and that brings our hearing to a close. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Maybe we do a quick summation, is that?
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm in a hurry.
No. Well, thank you so much for the discussion, and for those who know, I just want to leave you with two quick points. There is, I did mention at one point the Marion Holdings decision of 1995, and it does state that on appeal, it's incumbent on the assessor to look at the subject properties and determine assessments in a proper manner, which involves looking at stabilized rent. Now, using an appraisal technique used for mass appraisal, not actual income, expenses, or calculation rates are used in determining the market value. So the only real figure that's ever used in calculations was the sale price, and the assessor said that using the technique, the requirements of the act have been met, and the board does not agree. So since the Marion decision in 1995, it has been a requirement of the boards to rule based on site-specific valuations, and according to that decision, the assessor's net income from mass appraisal is not acceptable. Now, the other point that I'd like to mention, we talked a lot about cap rates today. I will suggest that 4 of the 6 cap rates that were presented today were purchased with the intention to renovate, and the municipal board has ruled decisively that that's not appropriate. And I will point out that the burden of proof, according to the Municipal Assessment Act, subsection 53(1) states that the burden of proof is on the assessor. So I will suggest that if we don't see the workups, supporting calculations, and if we use 4 of the 6 inputs, then I will suggest that the burden of proof has not been met, and the city's cap rate should not be considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wong.
Just quickly, like the cap rates that we use with the city, it does meet IAAO standards in the sense that the cap rates that we have, they result in good estimates of market value, and that is indicated by the fact that our values do meet IAAO standards, and so basically our cap rates result in accurate estimates of market value.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Hearing is now closed.